Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this evening. Lots to talk about as ever. I'm joined by Phil Holden, our deputy leader. Welcome,
Good
Phil.
evening.
Now, where do we start? I need to not commit my usual crime of missing things out that are in the title. So our title is Muslim in Charge of Education, Same-Sex Parenting, New Law for the SFP. We're going to talk a bit about the Reform Party. We're going to talk a bit about the buffer zone goings on. I know we talk about it a lot, but there's some new things to talk about there as well. And we will look forward to interacting with your comments as well. And I'm also going to tell you about lots of Scottish Family Party events coming up. There's quite a list, but I'll do that when the audience is built up a bit. I do think I will apologize in advance if I collapse in a silly coughing fit at some points during the live stream. I've got a silly tickly cough. So anyway, I've got a glass of water on hand. So forgive me if we have a few interludes. Phil will just have to keep talking when that happens. So let's get going. We've got someone angry. Someone's
yes, I've not seen that before. Already. Not so near the beginning.
Oh, that's
two people angry and one thumbs up.
No. One like and one angry. I think.
Okay.
It's interesting on social media. Sometimes we'll post something that we think is bad. Then someone will respond with the angry response, and you think, well, I don't know what they mean. Are they angry with what we're saying, or are they angry about the thing that we're disagreeing with? So, yeah. Hello, David. In fact, before we launch into it, on Saturday, I was at the wedding of Johnny Richardson. Johnny Richardson has been very involved in the family party. Still is. He was in our party election broadcast at the last election, and the son of David, obviously, and it was at Johnny's wedding to Taylor on Saturday, which we very much enjoyed. That was great. So Johnny practicing what he preaches by getting married. In fact, he spoke about it a bit in the party election broadcast.
Yeah, that's right. If you'd said, I would have brought a clip off of that.
Yeah, he talked about his forthcoming marriage, and I was looking forward to family life. So Johnny is well on that journey now, and we wish him well in that, obviously. Right, let's go. That's just a quick story. I was quite intrigued by mental health conditions are overdiagnosed. Streeting says. Now, Street of the Labour Party. I find it quite interesting in the last couple of weeks. The Labour Party and Keir Starmer have been saying things that you wouldn't normally expect to hear from the Labour Party. They've been putting sounding a bit more right-wing in a number of areas: defence spending, benefits, cutting down government waste, etc. I don't know if that's a deliberate strategy or this is just coincidence. But normally, mental health, I mean, the Lib Dems are obsessed with mental health. You've always got to be spending more money on mental health, have more mental health professionals in schools. And there's it's like a core dogma for them. But even the Labour Party are now saying mental health conditions are being diagnosed. I think when the Labour Party are saying that, I think we can be pretty confident that there is a real issue that needs to be addressed here. I mean, there are the various reasons why it's a problem. It's a problem the Labour Party looks at is the number of people who are on benefits. They're not working because they've been diagnosed with anxiety or depression or whatever. That's one problem. The other problem is it creates a culture in society where people describe their own emotional state in terms of mental health, which can be debilitating and can lead people to think, oh, I'm ill. What can I do about it? I'll just go and see the doctor and get signed off work or whatever. So I think from every point of view, reining back the mental health obsession these days, I think would be a very positive thing. And I think the degree to which this is embedded in younger generations is quite remarkable. If you ask, a teenager or someone in their 20s, if you ask them to tell the story of the last few years of their life, in my experience in any case, it's not at all unusual for it to include some episodes of mental health. Whereas I think probably in previous decades, it maybe it'd be obvious, a relative died, so you felt upset for a while, you grieved for a while, but maybe you wouldn't even bother saying that because it's so obvious. But now it seems just like reaching for the mental health vocabulary is just automatic for so many people, particularly younger people. Anything to add to that, Phil?
I think, like, I'm thinking of this from maybe a moral perspective, and I think actually maybe there is more mental health issues, and that's that's like, as a Christian, thinking about the verse which says the wicked will have no peace, and you know, if we're living lives in a way which isn't right, you know, we're seeing that, you know, 1 in 3 women are taking the lives of their own child. There are various other things going on. Shoplifting is through the roof, and all these kind of things. Then you kind of expect people to have, you know, some sort of nagging issue in their mind that won't really go away, or that they can't keep down. So I would think that it's quite possible that there's an unresolvable lack of peace in many people's, you know, minds that
Yep.
will stop them from functioning properly.
I think that's absolutely. I'm almost going to be disagreeing with myself here. Yeah. I'd also say as well, I think like all the LGBT encouragement and experimentation.
Yeah.
The fact is, these correlate with much higher levels of mental health problems. I think the degree of family breakdown, children brought up in broken homes and going through all sorts of traumatic experiences, doesn't exactly help. So yeah, I would agree. I think there are a lot of causes which are going to be resulting in more mental health problems. But I guess the other side of it is mental health language being applied to life states that don't really need to be medicalized or previously weren't medicalized. So I guess we're getting from both directions. We've got a society whose values are creating more psychological and emotional problems. And then we've also got a movement that's encouraging people to medicalize their emotional life more and more. So, yep. Yeah, so it's quite understandable. I mean, the Labour Party, yeah, you can quite understand why people are feeling that, because that's what the Labour Party is forever talking about. And so when they have to make these decisions, or when they choose to make these decisions, inevitably they're going to take the flak for it. Right, what else have we got? All right, just a quick one. A couple of things about Muslims here. This was a mosque in Aberdeen with vandalized. That's just some paint and someone threw a rock through the window. Now, I would say with this, first of all, okay, really bad thing to do. Police catch them, punish them. I would also say, you know, we shouldn't try and build a huge narrative from it. This is potentially like one naughty boy or one bad character. So we shouldn't try and make a huge thing of it. But what I found interesting online is the number of people who respond to it by saying, basically, right, Muslims, I don't like them, so I'm just going to say something about Muslims, why I think Islam's a problem. Now, people might have valid reasons for criticism about Islam, concerns about the influence of Islam. That's all fine. But in a situation like this, it seemed like a lot of people were not able just to say, that's bad. You shouldn't go throwing stones through windows and vandalizing buildings.
Yeah, I'd concur with that. You know.
And on a similar note, this chap here has been appointed is interim chair of Ofsted. Ofsted actually, as far as I'm aware, doesn't function in Scotland. We've got Education Scotland instead. So Ofsted inspects schools in England, and it functions. I think it's a similar function to Education Scotland. So a very prominent role in education. And again, some people have been going, it's just like autopilot, right? Like Muslim, bad, we don't want that, Christian country, etc. Whereas I think, okay, well, where do I start? I see someone like, I think, right, his values. Would I like that chap in charge of sex education in Scotland? Well, probably. It probably be. I don't know. He might be such a liberal Muslim. He doesn't. He might be a Hamza Yousaf for all I know. I don't know. But it might be the case that he's got some values that would actually be positive. Might it be that he holds some views as a Muslim that I think are quite dangerous and out of order? You know, it might be like anti-democratic or whatever, or it might have some views about women that I certainly wouldn't agree with. I might do, but I can't go assuming those just from, it looks like a very Muslim, which it seems like, again, hordes of people just like crying out in horror that he's been appointed to this prominent education position. Whereas I would be saying, well, I want to know what the man thinks. Now, if I saw, a white woman had been appointed to this role, I would equally be thinking, right, I'm quite concerned about what this person's values, and I'd like to know what they actually think about things. And I would then find out, if I was interested, I would find out to see what they're going to do. So
I'd say I've got a big red flag for him, and that's that Ofsted picked him. And that would probably be true of any candidate, basically. The fact that they've been selected.
We can edit this out later. I'm going to say something. Don't spread this around the internet. That this is private between us, okay, and people watching. I mean, the Conservatives ran education in England and Wales, England in particular, pretty well over their term in office. Michael Gove's reforms were very effective, and basically they pushed English schools in a very positive direction. That's why they're now getting results far better than Scotland or Wales, where the progressives are. And like the previous head of Ofsted has been slating the Labour Party for what they're going to do to schools. Right, okay, we'll edit that bit out later. So I wouldn't be concerned particularly from that point of view. I would imagine, if Sir Hamed Patel was someone who aired his views, if he has conservative values, about, say, homosexuality or whatever, particularly often, then he wouldn't be in this job. So, yeah, what he thinks, I don't know. But for me, it's an open question. I want to know what the man thinks about various issues. I wouldn't just be jumping in saying, "Oh, it's a bad thing because he's a Muslim." So, there's another quick section as well. You always get this stream of reports as though there's some problem. Boys in England significantly performing girls in maths and science. And our comment, basically, so what? Okay, girls outperform boys in language, in literacy, I think pretty consistently. I think more or less at all levels. You're never going to get a newspaper report about the problem of girls outperforming boys in language. You're never going to get a newspaper report about girls choosing biology to study biology in greater numbers than boys. You're never going to report about more girls than boys choosing to study English literature. But you do get stories about basically where the boys are doing better or where there's more boys choosing it, as though that's automatically a problem. And it's just so tedious.
So what's that saying? That's saying that girls are outperforming boys in maths and physics?
No, boys outperforming girls.
Boys outperforming girls. Okay.
I think they've been about the same for a while.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, the numbers go up and down a little bit. But a bit of a gap's opened up and boys have done better, which they traditionally have, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. Around the world, there does tend to be that difference. Another one of the reasons why more boys than girls choose to study maths and science is generally, if a boy is really clever at maths and science, that tends to be his main strength. That's the thing he's best at. And so that's what he does. When girls are really good at maths and science, they're often equally good at some other things as well. So they've got more options. And often, in many cases, they actually prefer their other options. So they've got the ability for it, but it isn't their favorite thing. So they don't do it. I came across this on Twitter as well. It's sort of on the same sort of wavelength. So we've got forgive the stereotyping, but these are supposed to be feminists, obviously. They're all queuing up to study gender studies at university. None of them want to go and study science, technology, engineering, and maths. But while they're queuing up to study gender studies, they're all campaigning for more women in the STEM subjects. And that's exactly the situation we have. There's lots of women, well, it's not just women, it's men as well. But I suppose this point applies to women in particular. Lots of women want other women to go and study the subjects that they don't want to in order to balance things up. It's a very, very strange situation. Right, just put Nicola Sturgeon there. Obviously, announced her resignation from Holyrood recently. I used to describe, but I still do, as Nicola Sturgeon as a female supremacist, which is like being a white supremacist. White supremacists think the white race is superior to all other people. Nicola Sturgeon believes that females are superior to males, basically. So the more power you can, the more you can hand things over to women, the better the world's going to be, because they're just superior. And I think that's basically the message coming through in the education system in Scotland as well. That's the sort of underlying message the boys have to put up with.
Any news about where she's going?
No. I mean, she'll have umpteen job opportunities. We'll see. We shall see. This was interesting. This was UK wide, or it might have been just England and Wales. I'm not sure, but it's quite interesting in any case. You hear a lot about the gender pay gap, how allegedly men get paid more than women because of structural injustice and stereotyping and discrimination, etc. This is showing that actually now, for people aged 16 to 24, females earn quite a significant amount, a couple of £1,000 more than males. So the consequences of that, well, first of all, it blows out of the water all these discrimination things. I think it shows two things. One thing it shows is that that's how it's starting out. Will it stay that way? No, it won't. The reasons for that, among the reasons for that, are women will at various points want to be spending time caring for children, and so their careers won't advance at the same rate. And also, women in general tend to be less ambitious in their careers, less committed to try to advance in their careers, whereas males tend to be more driven, prepared to make more sacrifices for their careers. So those factors come into play. But the result of this, I would suggest, is this. How about that for a graph? That's the number of men aged 16 to 24 marrying women. Again, it's in Britain, Office of National Statistics. So the graph starts at about, 1990, and it finishes about now, 2025. That's the decline in the number of men getting married aged 16 to 24.
I think I read one study which was basically women's attitudes to marrying somebody with a lower salary than them. And, basically that was a red line for many women. And so there was, on the one hand, there was this commitment to equality. But on the other hand, there was still this sort of, I wouldn't even consider somebody who earned less than me kind of thing, if it came to a partner.
And then it's just the practicalities. Even if the woman doesn't have that attitude, there's still the thought, I need to marry someone who can provide, possibly during child rearing years, etc. And so basically, if you want lots of people to get married and have lots of children, the ideal is a society where men get paid a lot and women don't get paid so much. Now, I'm not saying we should aim for that. I'm not saying there should be any systems or structures to bring about that situation. I'm just stating that's the result of it. And that used to be predominantly what the situation was, because women were excluded from a lot of high-paid jobs, and just there were cultural pressures, whatever, that tended to steer them towards lower-paid part-time work, and they have lots of kids. So again, just to re-emphasize, I'm not saying there should be any system to bring that about, but that change in society is coming through in our disastrously low fertility rates. It's all connected together.
And then looking at the sort of charts for the fertility rate with age as well, and you see how quickly fertility drops off. How high it probably is in the ages, early 20s and things like that, but how quickly it declines from there.
Right, Cameron, UK is in serious decline now, just like for us, but Reform will be the next party I vote for. Right, and the Scottish Family Party would say we would never support a party that supports the killing of unborn children. So that would be Reform just off the agenda. But since you brought up Reform, let's have a chat about them. all sorts of things been going on in reform, hasn't it? So we made that little image taken off their party election broadcast that they had reform is broken. Britain needs, well, obviously the Scottish Family Party. But Phil, what's your take on what's been going on inside reform?
So I've been quite surprised to see the reaction in much of the media, which I would see as being very supportive of reform in the past. And so these are, kind of channels like Maya 2C. It would be, the Lotus Eaters and the GB News, kind of Douglas Murray as well. Like he I wouldn't say he was necessarily supportive of reform, but he was fairly scathing in what he said about what had happened. He said, I think it's not much. There's not much point in a party on the right, particularly on the right of the Conservatives, that say we're going to sit back and not do anything about the existential threats to our country. So he was commentating on Farage saying that he didn't think anything could really be done in terms of deporting illegal immigrants. He was saying that there's not much that can really be done there. And so Douglas Murray was saying, well, at that point, at the point that you admit that you're not going to kind of defend your borders to those that have already entered, then, what are you standing on? And so I think there's many people that were hoping that reform was going to stand very strongly on this immigration issue, and they see what appears to be Nigel Farage backtracking on that to the point where he might not do much there, and then the things that have been said about Rupert Lowe as well, that it seems so much like the tactics that we've seen, in every other party, where somebody is accused of something, and it just happens to be that, they're becoming popular for another reason or something like that, So as Elon Musk has got behind Rupert Lowe and said he sees him as the next, leader of reform, then to see him ousted from the party, it kind of, it looks like a knife in the back, and that's very much what I've seen. People who I would have seen as being very supportive of reform saying this just looks like what has happened, that he was becoming too prominent, and so he's been sort of kicked out. The reform seems to be going after the Conservative vote, and they're alienating the people that have worked really hard for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. You'll have heard me say on this live stream several times, I think reform is vulnerable on the right. It has been for a long, long time, because there's a substantial section of the electorate with more hardline views than reform. I think immigration is one issue, but I think in terms of like the tone they'll speak about things, the way they'll bring race into the discussion, it's a big section of the electorate that's there. It's not the majority of reform support, but it's a significant part. So they're vulnerable.
I'd say it's some of the loudest parts of it. It would be the real activists there, and the key issues there would be things like Tommy Robinson, grooming gangs, immigration, people that those are the reasons that they were kind of supporting reform. And now I think they're kind of alienated, that they've realized that this isn't the party that's going to stand for what they're standing for.
Yeah. But with Rupert Lowe, just to give an example, I saw a tweet from the other day, and he was saying foreign nationals who knew about grooming gang perpetrators who had raped white girls, they should be deported. And I just thought, why do you need to put the word white in it? So if they rape another type of girl, that they could stay, could they? But he wants to get the word white in there. Not good. So that's the sort of that's the sort of Tommy Robinson sort of ethos as well. So he's shading into that. And I think Farage, politically, quite rightly, sees that it's not going to grow the party to become prime minister by having that sort of talk, because too much of the people that need to vote for him will find that repellent. But then the problem with Farage is the way that he does it is by, like you say, stabbing people in the back. And we've seen this happen to person after person various allegations made. When I was in UKIP, Farage was in charge, obviously, and there were some characters involved who were really bad characters, and there's concrete evidence they were very bad characters. But Farage couldn't care less because they were his mates. They were loyal to him. They weren't a threat to him, and everything was fine. But then when someone came along who did start developing a little bit of their own media profile, like Suzanne Evans, for example, then they've got to go. They're for the chop one way or another. You could say that's, well, I think that's in defense. If you're trying to, you need to build a team to be a credible government in waiting. So if you're forever like chopping the most competent people that are coming up alongside you, then you really can't build a party like that.
Yeah, like I saw, I was just looking I just did a search of Rupert Lowe, and one of the things that came up was an interview with Black Belt Barrister, and that had 400,000 views. So you could see that he was starting to get, quite a high profile in his own right, and I think that's the issue which has happened for him.
Yeah. And I think he was pretty quick on the trigger as well. He wasn't slow to burn his bridges with reform.
The news tonight is that he might be back in, but
that would be remarkable.
So we'll
I think
see
it's interesting what you say. I think, like you say, I think a lot of online commentators, conservative right-wing online commentators, they just about sort of came round to reform for the election in July. They maybe previously would have been saying, they're not hardline enough. They're behind Tommy Robinson. And maybe, the core values might have been, say, Tommy Robinson, anti-vax, and whatever. So more views that reform doesn't represent. But people seem to coalesce around reform for the election in July. And I think since then, that seemed to fracture a bit. But I think the online world of this is a small part of the electorate.
But for me, reform, it's a complete misnomer, because reform means that there's something that was there in the past that you're trying to kind of go back to, but I don't think they know what that is, and I don't think they have any clear definition of what they're trying to get back to. And I really think that the values that when we think about reform, many of the things that we'd be thinking about, particularly from a Christian angle, would be things that came through the Reformation and things like that, and the changes that came kind of politically in the country. So when there's this kind of reform and it doesn't really have much of a moral aspect to it, what are you reforming back to? And that's not clear in their policy, and there, in the Reformation, there were good things that happened. There were bad things that happened. Not all of it was fantastic, but at the core of it was people trying to get back to the Bible, basically, and getting back to the values that were there. And I think reform lacks that definition of what it's trying to return to. It's not big on family values. It's not big on any of the issues that we're standing on, which are particularly kind of moral issues, the value of life, the value of family, these kinds of issues, education,
Rupert Lowe put a video on his Twitter a few weeks ago now. Maybe someone had made it together, a little montage. And it was, back when Britain was okay, before everything went wrong. It was going back to 1997, I think it was. And it showed lots of clips around the place. I didn't say it explicitly, but I watched it thinking, I think the point he's making and the point his viewers will be getting was, look, everyone was white.
Yeah.
That's the point they make. Now, I think for people to say, right, okay, there are some serious issues that stem from immigration. We've got some serious problems in the nation, and we need to address them, and we need to restrict immigration dramatically to give us time to address these things. Otherwise, we're heading into big problems. There's one thing to say that, but it's a different thing to say, wouldn't it be great if we could go back to when everyone was white? We didn't have all those other people here. And I think Rupert Lowe openly was in the latter camp. And I think a significant number of reform supporters probably are. But yeah, we shall see. The other big danger for reform, I think, is the Trump effect. They've coupled themselves to, well, Farage has coupled himself to Trump. And if things go very badly wrong with Trump, which, I mean, who knows what's going to happen, that could be a big problem for reform as well. Are we pro-death penalty? We're not. And we don't have a policy on it. I've talked about my opinion on other episodes. I won't talk about it now, but we haven't got a policy on the death penalty. So, right, let's move on. Right. What other issues have we got? Some other ones. Let's have a quick look at this. So we had our pro-life light display in Aberdeen a couple of weeks ago. Is it a week ago? 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. No, week and a half ago. Anyway, up in Aberdeen. And a lot of aggro there. This was the Scotsman's report of it. So their headline was a quotation from Gillian Mackay. I mean, that's just they've got no pretense of neutrality. So they quote Gillian Mackay, a disgraceful new low. Scottish Family Party holds anti-abortion protests within buffer zone. So laying out a few lights, having some speeches in a time of reflection, allegedly was a disgraceful new low. And see, it was only coincidentally within a buffer zone. In any case, the clinic was closed, so it didn't matter. So it was quite that's the Scotsman for you. But on the same topic, you might have seen this. This was quite amusing. This is on the opposite side of the road to where the vigil stands in Glasgow by the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. So the buffer zone runs down the middle of the road. So on the side of the road where this photograph would have been taken from, if you like, that's where the vigil stands. And the young lady on the other side of the road came along with pro-abortion posters, banners, as a sort of counter-protest. So she set herself up on the other side of the road. But then the police came along because she was inside the buffer zone. And the buffer zone applies to pro-life and pro-choice communication. So the police came along and moved her on, which I thought was quite amusing. And before anyone says like two-tier policing, she moved on. And that's what they do. That they initially come and like inform you what the law is and give the opportunity to go. And she went. So it wasn't that there was any sort of double standard applied. But another interesting one, this is, just go back one. This is in the building behind the young lady there. So again, this is within the buffer zone. And there messages that have been put up in, I would assume, are flat windows. I think there's a block of flats now in the Luma building there. And they're also illegal because you can't have this sort of messaging in the buffer zone. Obviously, the buffer zone law is absolute nonsense. That people should be perfectly free to put up messages like that in the window. But having said that, if the government's going to introduce unjustified restrictions on freedom of speech, they've got to apply them evenly. So I understand that someone has reported this to the police now. Well, we didn't, but I understand that someone has. So we'll wait and see how long it takes the police to work out which flat doors they need to knock on. I would say if those signs are still there in a couple of weeks' time, well, maybe we'll start asking questions about why that's the case. It's interesting, the bottom one, free, safe, and legal. I think the common phrase with that, hadn't it used to be safe, legal and rare? Yeah.
So they've taken away rare and replaced it with free.
Yeah.
Which is more like abundant, isn't it?
Yeah. Now, the other thing I'll mention this now, actually. I said I was going to mention lots of events. On Saturday evening at 8 o'clock, we're meeting outside the Chalmers Clinic in Edinburgh, which is on Chalmers Street, at the top of Chalmers Street. And we're going to hold a little demonstration. There are not going to be any speeches, but we've got a few placards. We'll lay out some of the lights. We'll maybe not do all of them. We'll just have the ones representing the lives taken by the clinic or through the clinic that we're next to. And we're going to hold a little pro-life event there. And obviously, it will be within the buffer zone. because it seems like the Humanist Society of Scotland, all the journalists that are commentating on it, they don't understand that you can't break the law for a buffer zone when the thing is closed. So they were up in arms that we had this thing in a buffer zone, but the clinic was closed. And I've debated this with a few people online, and they just don't seem to be able to get it. So we're going ahead and we're going to do this. And part of the thing is this could get some attention. Some people might come and point cameras at us. So the messages on our placards, Unborn Lives Matter, We Care, things like that, will appear in the media, and the pro-life message will go through. And the family party will be publicised as well. Right, so if you can join us on Saturday, that'd be great. I say 8 o'clock. There, see details on social media. But I just want to make it absolutely clear to convince you that you can't break this law when a clinic is closed. So here we go. A person who is in a safe access zone for protected premises commits an offence if the person doesn't act with the intention of, or is reckless as to whether the act has the effect of, influencing the decision of another person to access, provide, or facilitate the provision of abortion services at the protected premises. Okay? So a person in the safe access zone does something that could, or they intend to, or they do something that will probably will, or could do, influence the decision of another person with regard to abortion. But then if you look at, I'll miss out the next two, they're not important. Then the last one, where in each case the other person, in other words, the person influenced, is in the safe access zone for the purpose of accessing, providing, or facilitating the provision of abortion services at the protected premises. Right, so if the premises is closed, if it's been closed for 24 hours before and it's going to be closed for 24 hours after, there's no one accessing that facility to provide or facilitate or to have an abortion or whatever. That's just not happening. So the person that can be influenced isn't there, so the crime can't be committed. Simple as that. Then look at this next bit as well. So it says, where a person doesn't act in the safe access zone constituting an offence under subsection 1, and the act has a continuing effect, it does not matter for the purpose of that subsection whether the other person referred to is in the safe access zone at the time when the person does the act. In other words, if you do something like stick a placard to a lamppost, and you do that in the middle of the night, but it's still there the next morning, it's had a continuing effect, and then the person comes into the safe access zone at a different time and is influenced by it, then you've broken the law. Okay, so they've made it very particular that if it has a lasting effect, but what we're going to do doesn't have a lasting effect, because we're going to take our placards away with us, so that obviously can't apply. And that section of the law wouldn't need to be there if when the person actually did the thing, it doesn't matter when they did it. And then the last thing, just to seal the deal, the reference to an act that is capable of being seen or heard by another person does not include an act that is capable of being seen or heard by the other person only indirectly by means of seeing or hearing a recording or transmission of the act by electronic means. In other words, if we put on social media, no one can go into the buffer zone the next day, watch it on their phone, and say, oh, that's broken the law because I'm in the buffer zone and they've tried to influence me. So it's saying you can't have that. So I think it's crystal clear that you can't break this law when a clinic is closed. But as I say, a lot of people seem to misunderstand that. So maybe we'll get some attention as a result. So. Okay. I'll maybe say that this is just from I'll say that for another week, actually. If I know, let's talk about it now. This is from the Sandyford Clinic in Glasgow. This is part of their information section about abortion. So it says, what happens to the pregnancy tissue after abortion? Right, so obviously, they're not going to use baby, unborn, whatever. The pregnancy tissue will either be passed with bleeding when you go to the toilet. If you undergo abortion in a hospital setting, we will deal respectfully with your pregnancy tissue. That just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Deal respectfully. Why do you need to? They don't only say, if you go to the dentist, they don't say, I'm going to take your tooth out, but we'll deal respectfully with your tooth. So they're sort of giving away what they really think there. In keeping with national guidance for sensitive disposal of pregnancy tissue. Pregnancy tissue will be placed in an individual box and will be sent to the hospital mortuary. It will then be sent to a local crematorium for cremation. There will be no cremated remains ashes available from the pregnancy. How about that then? So placed it in a box, sent to the mortuary, and then for cremation.
I was thinking about even the word, abortion, and you have an abortion clinic, and how similar that is to an abattoir. So in an abattoir, you've got basically the abort at the beginning, as you have an abortion, and so they're trying to pretend that it's not killing a human.
I think the whole term abortion is questionable. I think the definition of abortion is to stop something before it starts. Like if you've got a rocket going to launch, if you abort the launch, then it doesn't take off. You stop it before it starts. So I don't think abortion is an appropriate term for termination of pregnancy, because the new life's already started. It's not an abortion. Contraception should be described as abortion.
I think you see films like The Terminator, and it was pretty clear that what the Terminator was doing was killing people and terminating them. So I think those definitions can have the connotation of death within them, and we should make it clear that that's what's happening.
And how about this last bit? An abortion will not cause you to suffer emotional or mental health problems in itself. It's maybe worth doing a bit of research on that. I mean, is that just straight off not true? But if you have had mental health problems in the past, you may experience further problems after an unplanned pregnancy. These problems are likely to be a continuation of the problems experienced before and can recur whether you choose to have an abortion or continue with the pregnancy. That must be stretching the evidence very, very considerably to make those comments. You can see what they're trying to do, basically. They're saying, even if you do have an abortion and feel like depressed and whatever else, it probably would have happened in any case. And it was probably something that you already had. They're basically saying the abortion makes no difference.
This was something I saw on X. Let's see if I can share that. Does that work? Yeah. So I'm 20 years old, just did an MA last night, and was already 12 weeks by then. When I saw the fetus pass, I could see its toes, legs and arms. I was surprised at how developed it had already looked, and I couldn't take my eyes off it for 10 minutes. But even then, I thought the best course of action would be to flush it, so I did. I felt uneasy afterwards. It didn't feel right. I went here on Reddit after a few hours, and after seeing stories of how lots of people did a burial for their baby, I felt so guilty. I felt intense regret for what I did to my baby. I carried out the MA at my dorm, but I still could have given it a proper burial in my back garden at home. I don't know how I can ever move on or forgive myself for this.
Right. MA is medical abortion, which means by pills. Yeah. And that's just sadly routine. That story could be reproduced many, many times in Scotland. Now, I think it might be worth trying to consider a challenge to these statements here I think some of those statements are just not true. You hear about, medical disinformation. Well, I think we're in that territory with that, I think. Right, before I forget, I'm going to tell you about all our other events. It would be great to see you. Tomorrow night, Paisley. We're going to meeting in Paisley at 7 o'clock in the Last Post. That's Weatherspoons. So the Last Post, 7 o'clock, Paisley, tomorrow night. We've had meetings there before. We haven't had one for a little while, but I'm coming over to that. I've mentioned Edinburgh Saturday night at 8 o'clock. Kirkwall, 28th of March, 7 p.m. You can check the details on our social media. We're in Kirkwall on the 28th of March. Thurso, 29th of March, at lunchtime. So lunchtime, early afternoon, Thurso. Inverness in the evening of the 29th of March. I think that's a Saturday. Fife, we're going to meeting in Kirkcaldy on the 3rd of April. Kirkcaldy, 3rd of April. And Dundee, the 7th of April. Dundee, the 7th of April. So, circulating around some of our regular meeting venues. Those meetings, I think, I'm actually going to all of those meetings. Actually, so it would be great to see you there if you can make it. Right, what else have we got? We've got another. I've talked about that. That's the video I made, because you get arrested for expressing pro-life views outside the hospital, but you walk into the hospital and there's a massive pride flag with various like pro-LGBT comments. I made a video about that, which I thought would have been a smash hit actually, but the views are not that high. So if you haven't watched it, go over and have a look at that. We've been praising Viktor Orban's family policy again in Hungary. It's really great what he's doing. We don't, there's various ways of implementing these pro-family policies. We're not saying we do exactly the same as him, but he's definitely pulling things in the right direction there, which is not to endorse him more widely. I don't know how true some of the accusations against him are, but family policy-wise, it's great. Oh, this is, I don't know, so I suppose this is amusing, I suppose. The OECD has published a report about the Scottish economy, and they have recommended that members of the Scottish Parliament receive education in finance and economics. I mean, that's surely pretty embarrassing for the Scottish Parliament. But basically, they've looked at the operation of the Parliament, they've looked at the processes for budget and the debates that go on around it, and they've said the MSPs need to learn some basic things about economics and finance, which is absolutely true. I find it difficult to talk about this. You don't want to be unkind, but you watch MSPs talking about these sort of issues in the Parliament, and it's obvious for a lot of them, they've got a range of areas where they're quite comfortable speaking, because you just parrot the standard lines. When it comes to things that, few numbers floating around, it's a bit of logic in the economics or whatever, so it's really not their territory. Let's just put it that way. They're not comfortable in this sort of area. There are exceptions. I might say Murdo Fraser, Kate Forbes, there are exceptions, for example, but a lot of them, they just seem to have no grasp whatsoever in these, I suppose, the hard area, not the soft areas of politics, the hard areas of politics, that they just haven't got a clue. And the OECD seems to concur and recommends they need further education. So, pretty embarrassing for the Scottish Parliament.
Do you think you could run a class for them?
I would say, to some degree, I'm no expert, but I think I could. I could offer something. I think for a lot of them would be something new. Yeah, there's the story, wasn't it, a few years ago when he was the cabinet secretary for finance before he was found to be sending texts of a sexual nature to a 16-year-old schoolboy. I mean, someone asked him about the Laffer curve, and he'd never heard of it. For those who are not, the Laffer curve is a graph that basically shows how much tax income you get for different tax rates. And on the left-hand side, you get no tax because you're zero. If your tax rate is 0%, you get no tax income. But on the other end of the curve, if your tax rate is 100%, you also get no income. because no one bothers doing anything that's going to earn that money because it's pointless. So as soon as you get to the point where you earn that money, people just go home and don't do the work. So you get no income. And so in between those two extremes, there must be some sort of curve, and there must be a maximum somewhere. If it starts at 0 and ends at 0, somewhere along the curve, there must be a maximum. And maybe there could be a case for setting your tax rate or your tax system to try and find that sweet spot where you get the maximum income from it. Yeah, Derek Mackay was unfamiliar with this concept. But just think about it. Think about the way it happens. Same with all ministerial roles. You take someone who's, I don't know, worked for a housing association or been a history teacher or who knows what. And then they get a job and they seem to be one of the more articulate and intelligent ones or whatever. And so that you're made cabinet secretary for something. So imagine, Phil, imagine you were made cabinet secretary for health.
Yeah.
How would you do? How would you feel doing that job?
So
and it's like you're starting
no background in there. Obviously, I prefer something that's related to technology or something like that. But
imagine you are today. Yeah. I've called. I'm the first minister. I've called you in. I've said, Phil, health. It's health for you. Off you go. You are now the health secretary.
Yeah. I end up at the mercy of advisors, basically. Yeah. And so or quickly doing my own reading and whatever, and I think that's the position that people are in. And I kind of think that there's a case to be said for, I don't know, part of the So at the moment we have people standing in constituencies, but we're less geographically rooted than we were at the time that constituencies were invented. We probably have more affiliation to different groupings and different things like that, And I think there's something to be said for having a bit of a competition for, who's going to be the finance minister. And people would be standing on that basis that they're going into government because they want to do something in the area of finance, rather than they want to do something for the constituency of, X or Y or Z.
Let's get with proportional representation.
Yeah.
So for proportional representation, you put together your team, and let's say the top 10 on your list would be your core cabinet or your core shadow cabinet people, and then you fill it for that. But as it is, it's a lottery. So maybe you're one person you've got who actually knows something about economics and finance. Maybe they don't get elected. So the poor old country is stuffed because they haven't got anyone who knows. But like you say, it just leaves them totally at the mercy of advisors.
And can these people, they will either over-represent their constituency because it's like, well, the person that represents this constituency is the prime minister, therefore that disproportionately affects policy, or that they're so busy at their job as prime minister or whatever cabinet, office job that they have, that the local issues get pushed to the side because they're dealing with national issues.
And the local issues should go through the council. So even if it's a Holyrood level issue, go to see your councillor, and your councillor raises it with the government. That should be the system it goes through. I think that'd be more effective, because then you've got someone who is more independent of the government as well. Anyway,
if you stand on the list in Scotland, you're standing as a kind of nameless person in yes. some sense, because only at the constituency level do you have a profile. Yeah. I don't know, maybe there's something in there for campaigning where you're actually putting a team through on the list. I don't know.
Yeah,
that would make sense. But
right, let's move on. We've got a few minutes left. Right, Michael Robinson. Michael Robinson works for Spuck, a very nice chap. I thought this was a good tweet. Every child has a right to life, to be raised by their mother and father, where that's possible, protection from gender ideology, to an intact body free from chemical or surgical harm. What it's doing there is like inverting the conventional understanding of children's rights, which is totally different. But I think Michael probably had been watching this. I'll give this a plug. Katie Faust who wrote the book then before us. She calls herself a children's rights advocate, but she basically argues for conventional family, children brought up by their mum and dad wherever possible, against same-sex parenting. She's very much pro-life, just the whole family party package, basically. She's a very able advocate, an articulate advocate for that. In fact, she was on the family party live stream a few years ago. We've had some community, maybe twice. Maybe we should get her back on again. And I thought, for years, she's so good at what she's doing. Why does she have such a small profile? I mean, it didn't seem to have great reach and any promise. But that seems to have changed within the last, I don't know, year, the last few months. And she seems to be getting a lot more attention, a lot more opportunities. And so she was over for the ARC conference. And the thing I've got on there is from Spectator TV. She did an interview with Spectator TV. It's about 40 minutes. And it's just brilliant because she just hammers home every aspect of the socially conservative case with regard to family life. And the young lady interviewing her, it's not hostile, but she puts forward a few points. You know, other people might say this. But every time Katie answers them, like knocks them for six. And you can see by the end of the interview, she's sort of given up resisting. She's been like steamrolled by the evidence. and the case is just overwhelming. So I would very much recommend you go over and watch that. It's very, very good. There's another tweet from this has been sitting on the live stream slideshow for ages. I haven't quite got round to it. It's from Katie as well. This is about a child who's saying she doesn't want her mother to become a man, which I would guess to a lot of people in the Scottish government or Scottish establishment would say, oh, we've also got a transphobic child here. But this child said, so she likes my voice and does not want me to grow a beard. So that's what the mother is saying. It's like the mother's complaining that the child doesn't want her to become a man. Again, that's a perspective I haven't particularly thought about before, but I would imagine there's an increasing number of children having to go through this, having to watch either their mum or dad try to pretend that they're the other. So, yeah, quite striking. What else have we got? We've talked about that one. Right, we're done. With 2 minutes to go.
go home early. Early closing time.
Right, let's look at some comments. About Cat in Edinburgh, I would say we're not really on your wavelength. You're probably at the wrong shop, I think, for the sort of comments you've been making. Right, Kathy. Do you bring that up, Phil?
Yep.
Yep, go on then.
So if there's somebody willing to stand there, that's where it comes from most of the time, that we can have people stand in any area. So if you're wanting to vote for SFP and there isn't somebody standing, then there's a process for standing, and we'd encourage people to put themselves forward.
Yep. In the forthcoming Scottish election, we'll have candidates on every list. So everyone in Scotland next year will be able to vote for the Scottish Family Party on the list. And we'll be in constituencies. Well, we'll see. We'll see how that works out. As Phil says, though, where people are keen, sure, we can do that. Right. Hello, Darth. Or Dirth, that is, isn't it? I'd like to see you in Paisley tomorrow. How do I introduce as a member of how do I introduce? Well, just come along. You'll see us there. We normally go upstairs. There's an upstairs section in the last post. We normally pull a few tables together up there. And the other thing we normally do is put a couple of family party policy booklets on the table so people can recognize us. People normally recognize me in any case. But yeah, it'd be great to see you there. If you wouldn't mind not coming in costume, that'd be great. It might be a bit alarming for some of the other customers in the last post there. Okay, right. I think we're about there. Just a few comments there. Yeah. Last one. Let's get one there. Will the Scottish Family Party repeal the smacking ban? Our policy is to repeal the smacking ban. Correct. Yeah. Which is why on Wikipedia it describes us as a party that's pro-beating children or something. As though that's something really unusual. We just want the law to just be the same as it is in England and Wales, roughly speaking. My catchphrase for this now is that in Scotland they banned adults from smacking children, but instead you have children smacking their teachers. And I think these things are not unrelated. So, yes, that is absolutely our policy. And that's where we differ from the likes of the Conservatives in Reform, is that we don't just latch on to the latest controversy and drag our heels over the latest developments. We would actually go back and fix things that were bad decisions that were made years and years ago. The Conservatives opposed the smacking ban in Scotland. I think maybe every one of them voted against the smacking ban. They claimed it was for technicalities, but every one of them voted against it. So will it be in their manifesto to repeal it? No, because it's water under the bridge. They've moved on to dragging their heels over men using women's changing rooms and toilets now. So that's the Conservatives. Right, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you at one of those events, and we will see you next week. Thanks very much, Phil.
Have a good evening.
And good night.